Hello everyone, my name is Leah, aka the Vibe Enthusiast, and this is Conversations with the Vibe Enthusiast, where we're talking about the connection between environmental sustainability, culture, and how Howard students are doing what they can to save the world. Okay? Today I'm here with Clarissa.
Hi.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Clarissa Smith. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I'm an environmental studies major and legal communications minor. I'm a sophomore.
Okay. And I'm also from Texas.
Okay.
I didn't tell you that,
Yeah.
but my name is Leah, and I'm from Galveston Island, Texas. So you told us your major, and you're from Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think growing up in Dallas impacted the way that you, your relationship with the environment?
Right. So, I grew up in a small town, which I tell people I'm from Dallas because I'm from Dallas County. But I grew up in a little town called DeSoto, and I went to school in Addison, which is like 45 minutes to an hour away from DeSoto. So every day I'm spending 2 hours in the car. And something that's really funny is like I get motion sick, so I can't do anything in the car but look out the window. And you notice so much as the terrain changes, as the forestry around you changes, coming from home to school. And so I would say the biggest things I noticed were like your five senses kind of. One of them was smell. Every single day as soon as you got on the highway, you pass this river called the Trinity River. And you can never see it. It could be foggy, it could be dark, you can never see it, but you're gonna smell it. And it smells terrible. And everybody's kind of just like, oh yeah, that's the Trinity. And like, that's the end of the conversation. Like, this is the river that we get, you know, that we get like, that are in our homes, that like is in our toilets and all that type of stuff. And we're just like, oh yeah, it stinks. Like,
Yeah.
That's not something that you shouldn't be able to smell the river before you see it. I would say other than that, just like, you see so many differences in how the ground is structured. In my town, like, there's trees everywhere. You look outside, you see a tree. I go to school and it's like just buildings. It's like kind of reminds you of I would honestly say DC, New York. It's just like buildings everywhere, and you're like, this is where the richest people live and everything, but this is killing the environment, and obviously they have the highest amounts of traffic. And so I would say living in Dallas, because where I lived, the school system wasn't good, so I had to go so far. It gave me the opportunity to see how different land could change within 30 minutes, within like 20 miles.
Yeah. So where you went to school was like super residential.
Mm-hmm.
Like you saw buildings like malls and like
Yeah.
superstores and stuff like that.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I actually did work in commercial real estate. So the people who like developed those properties, owned those properties, and we had this project where we like did a property from the ground up. So I saw them. I saw the land before.
Yeah.
And they're like, look at all these trees, and I was like, wow, look at all these trees, and they're like, we're cutting them down.
Yeah.
And like that's what, you know, the richer people prefer because of the convenience that it brings.
Exactly.
Everything that you need is there. But would you say like the sacrifice is worth it?
You know, the thing about environmental studies is it's very interdisciplinary. You can't like just look at this one and just this. And so the thing about my school system is that it was not, it's just not what my parents were looking for me. It was very, very heavy into sports. That was kind of the main focus of that school district. And when it came to grading and that type of thing, like when the district came out to grade our school, we would always fail any type of academic test. So it wasn't really an option for my parents. My mom's an educator, so she was like, yeah, you're not going to this school. And so the next best school that I got into, and that obviously I had financial aid and that type of thing, was all the way out in Addison. And so it's like, I'm committing to going to this school that's really far, but obviously there were other options, like there was a bus and that type of thing. So for a while, like all throughout middle school and the first few years in high school, I rode a bus. But yeah, I would definitely say I understand why there's so much complication regarding like the best thing for me to do environmentally would have been to walk to school. If I did that, I think personally I probably wouldn't have ended up at a school like Howard. I feel like my educational experience would have been completely different. And so you have to like, you know, weigh it.
I resonate with that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm from Galveston, but I lived, like, not in Galveston, and that commute.
Yeah.
You know, I was driving, like, an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like, back and forth, not back and forth, but total,
right,
each day
mm-hmm.
for a better education. And I wouldn't have been at Howard if I didn't like have to make that commute.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like you said, it's interdisciplinary,
Yeah.
and a lot of systems would need to change
Mm-hmm.
to benefit the environment. Could you talk a little bit more about your major, your minor, and like how what you're learning will like impact your work in sustainability?
Yeah. So my major is environmental studies, and it's a little bit different than environmental sciences in the sense that it focuses more so on the social side of things. Like the first class I took in this major was environmental inequality, which talked about like historical events that have happened that people don't really see as an environmental issue, but they definitely were. Like Asthma Alley in Chicago is basically these few neighborhoods that every single child in those neighborhoods had asthma because of these plants that were next to the neighborhoods. And then you also have like Love Canal, where there's basically something that's known as a Superfund site, where you have all these chemicals oozing from the ground, and so like every family in that area, their children are having birth defects. And so like that's the type of thing that really piques my interest. Like obviously the sciences are extremely important, but when it comes to the social side of things, you have to make people understand why this matters. I could spit greenhouse gases at you all day and how sea level has changed and all that stuff, but if you don't have academic background in that, you're like, okay, so if I tell you that your cousin or your mom or somebody is not going to live as long because of environmental inequality and environmental issues, then that's really going to stick with you. And so that's why I chose environmental studies instead of sciences. And as far as legal communications as my minor, I hate to say it, but people aren't going to do good just for the sake of doing good. And so there has to be some type of enforcement. It can't just be, do this because this is right and this is going to help the most people. There has to be law. There has to be enforcement. And you need support behind that. So whether that support is from the government or that support is via taxes, you know, like we have in DC with bags and that type of thing. It's not just about making sure that people realize that this thing is bad, but it's about making it economically feasible so that they don't have an option but to do the environmentally conscious thing. And so you really have to know people, and you have to know what's gonna work. Just telling somebody, like just striking in the streets, you know, it's not gonna be as effective as telling somebody, I'm gonna put a tax on gas, and so it's gonna be economically inefficient for you to have a gas car rather than an electric car. So that's kind of where the law side comes in. It's like I really believe law is necessary to change the culture, but also law is necessary to kind of fight against these big companies who don't want to change.
Right.
So, yeah.
Because like we're kind of in this position now in the U.S. where like big companies have a lot of power when it comes to like sustainability efforts, and like through like corporate social responsibility and other like initiatives like that, companies have been trying their best to mitigate that. But like being from Texas, I actually like read an article recently about BP in the Gulf of Mexico. They're gonna configure their pipes to make them more sustainable. And I'm like, construction and like literally like tearing apart pipes, like having oil leak into the ocean to build new pipes is not sustainable in any way. So like we do need like some type of like legal action or some type of policy to be like, hey, like you cannot do that. And if you look at countries like, if you look in Costa Rica or if you look in the EU or like even like anywhere in South America, like there is legislation. Like Costa Rica has like given their land human rights.
Like it's possible. It's just, you know, you have to do it a certain way. People might be mad, you know, like that's the culture thing.
Exactly.
I mean, that's when the scientists come into place and say, if you don't do this, like the impacts are unfixable. So.
And so, do you feel like culture follows laws, or do you think laws follow culture?
Ooh, what a question. I think that culture reacts to law. I think law, because in this sense, I definitely think the law is following the culture. A culture that is very selfish and unsustainable and what's the easiest, comfortable, most convenient thing to do. If we didn't have that problem as a culture, there wouldn't be a need for law. If we just had a culture of selflessness and kind of understanding that we're impacting people like all across the world, then you wouldn't need law. So I guess if I had to choose, I would say law follows culture, because if there is no need for this law, everybody's already doing it, then why bother?
Yeah, so like in this specific society, like
yeah.
USA.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so individualistic, yeah.
Extremely.
Yeah.
And so like, do you think that there will be a shift of attitude or culture in the US?
What I think is really funny, and I'm glad I went to HBC for a lot of reasons, but particularly in environmental studies, environmental advocacy is seen as very white. It's seen as very, in the sense of sea turtles, plastic straws, like save the animals and that type of thing. And so when black people think of environmental studies, that's what they think of. They think of Greta Thunberg. They think of activism in the streets and that type of thing, and they see it as very white and very non-cultural. Like, I can't be black and be like, save the environment. But I think if there was a sense of awareness in the black community of how much this is impacting us, how much we're being discriminated against within environmental studies, it would shift. It would change everything. So you don't just have people in the streets, rallying about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, which is completely necessary. But on that side, you also have other things like stop putting power plants in our neighborhoods, stop bringing all of these Superfund sites, and stop not addressing these things that are literally impacting our health, causing birth defects, causing an increased chance of cancer, and all these different things within black communities. If we knew, we would be going just as hard for the environment as if we were going for anything else. But obviously the system is set up so people think it's about turtles and whatnot.
Yeah, that's literally like my main goal. Like, okay, I want to study this stuff, but like with me studying PR and me understanding how to appeal to people, how to appeal to certain demographics, I want to take this information and make it accessible to black people, or to just underserved communities who don't get this knowledge, who don't get these resources. And like you were saying, if we change our culture, there will be a shift in culture, because black culture is the pinnacle of U.S. culture, and U.S. runs the world. So it'll take us. And I never thought about it like that until you just said that.
Yeah.
Dang. So now we know. Yeah, we are the culture.
Yeah.
And we have the power, the manpower, we have the spirit, we have everything to shift the culture.
Yeah, we're in a great place in time, I feel like, for that. People are actually listening, and obviously with when you think about laws in the sense of racism, companies are now required to have DEI and that type of things, and though that has its kinks and yada yada yada, but it's a requirement. You got to have me in your space. Same thing with environment. We can do that. And so it's mandatory, and so that's another way the culture could shift.
Yes. Yeah. And then the last question is, I feel like you already answered it though, but it's do you think culture relates to environmental sustainability?
That's a great question. I'm gonna have to say absolutely. When I study in this class I'm in, global climate change, when you look at the way other countries are reacting to basically the effects of what we've done, like drought or flooding and all these things, when you look at the way they react, it's very selfless. You don't have people being oh, I'm just gonna get as much as I can. What you see is communities kind of build on that they're going through these hardships and everything, and you see them using their sciences and to kind of fix drought and fix all these things. And within a study in India specifically, there are these women, I think it's 47 women, who noticed that the forest was just being taken down and all these things, and they got these buckets and they went and they took all these different species and varieties of plants and put it in this greenhouse just to protect it, because they kind of know, without law, without science, without all these things, they just know that the environment needs to be protected, and you can't let all these species just die off. But I think in America, it's all about the money, or it's all about personal gain, and so there's not really a love for nature. And so yeah, I think culture has everything to do with it, and that's kind of what really determines if an environment, if a culture can make environmental environment the priority.
Yes. You hit it right on there. Like, I wanted to start snapping for real. Like, culture plays a big part on your relationship with the environment and how you how you interact with it. The fact that they intrinsically knew, okay, we don't have the resources to fight these companies, whoever's messing up our forests, but we need to do what we can to protect what we can. And so, like, I feel like, because I've traveled, like, mostly in the Caribbean and, like, Central America, and they all had that attitude towards the environment. And they taught me, like, okay, the U.S. imperialism has taken over our land. Okay, cool. Like, they build they have all these factories, they have all of these, like, plantations here, and they're kind of, like, messing up our biodiversity. But the land that we do have, we're going to take the best care of it. We're going to, like, keep it diverse. We're going to keep it clean. We're going to put laws in place so that what we do have is protected. I really, like, appreciate that you understand that, too. It gives me hope for the future. High-key.
You have to, I would say my first year of environmental studies, I was like, oh, this has to change. And I was like, okay, I gotta be realistic. So it's like, law is kind of, I first minored in political science, and then I went to legal communications because I was like, people gotta, you just gotta make this stuff law. But the only other thing I want to say to that is, even as Americans have noticed that, like, the environment is important, and they try to go to these other countries and help. I did research in eastern Uganda this past summer, and what we noticed is that these researchers from, like, I'm not going to say a company, but these researchers from America would come in and they'd be like, this is what you need to do, genetically modify your seeds, and this is what's going to work. And they tell them to do this stuff, and it doesn't work. Well, my research was actually saying, okay, let's let the farmers speak. Let's let people who've lived there their whole lives do what they think is best. And what you saw is that, like, production increased tenfold. Like, if you let people till the land that they've been on, America has this idea that, like, the more land you have, the more production, and that's not the case. Like, you see just fields and fields of corn if you go to, like, Idaho or Iowa, and that's so environmentally unsustainable because you're wiping out biodiversity. You have all of this just one crop, so if any type of flea or bug comes in, there's no food that survives. But what we found in eastern Uganda is that the more biodiversity, the more crops you have per land, that's what increases your production. It's not the size of your land. And so it's like, if you just look at the data, like, I could talk all day about we need biodiversity, yada yada yada. If you just look at the data, and this is why, like, the hard sciences are important, because they support what the social scientists are saying. It's just all, like, it's all in the pudding. Like, what do they say? Like, the proof is in the pudding. Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. So it's like, we're not out here just talking for no reason,
No, for real. Yeah. Wow. Like, that's really, like, a good focal point. Yeah. I didn't do research in, you said Eastern Uganda?
Eastern Uganda, yeah.
I did not do research there, but I, like, did learn a little bit about how, like, the U.S., USDA specifically, was, like, going to all of these other countries, like, countries in India and, like, in Africa, and saying, like, you need to genetically modify your seeds, like, you need to produce crops the way we produce them. And, like, not only are they losing food, but it takes $1 million equipment, like, multi-million dollar, like, projects and processes to, like, get this land to produce these crops. And that's why, like, farming has been, like, become monopolized in the U.S. Because traditional farmers can't really make that bread. Like, these family farmers who've been farming for generations and generations on land that was tilled by enslaved people, on land that was stolen. So, it's really crazy that they think, the best way of farming and producing crops would be something that we, as like, American citizens created. No.
Definitely not. Like, how long have we been here? A few hundred years? We don't have the answer.
Right. They would know.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh my gosh. It was so nice talking to you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. You just like dropped so much knowledge, so much wisdom. Like, I'm so excited to see what you do in the future.
Oh, thank you. Same for you. You
Thanks.
definitely started the conversation.